to come back. Is Aubrey Edwards going to restart this match?
Wait a minute.
Sean Spears? Oh my God! Spears with a chair shot right to the side of the head of Cody, who couldn't even get his hand up.
Hey, welcome back to the CRP. I'm here with Miguel. Miguel, how you doing today?
Hey, happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July. We've got a huge fight week coming up this week. But we've got something a little more important to talk about right now, even than the great UFC and International Fight Week and all that stuff in Vegas. We've got I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm even actually doing this show.
What's more All-American?
We are talking professional wrestling.
All-American and pro wrestling.
The AEW, and they had a problem, didn't they, Miguel?
Well, here's the deal.
Or was it a problem? I mean, maybe it's not. They've gotten millions of hits on it.
I think it's a question. I think that here's the deal. AEW is All Elite Wrestling, for those not been paying attention lately. And people watch the WWE, and that's been the wrestling product for the last 20 years. You know, if you're really into wrestling, you would know about TNA or Impact Wrestling. They've been around for many years. And I think the guy who sang for the Smashing Pumpkins is the guy who's the money behind them now. But, you know, AEW is really formed this year. They're a brand new product. They didn't exist last year. And they've got a lot of legs in a lot of different ways, a lot of support from wrestlers in the business, 7 or 8 guys from the WWE whose contracts are coming up that are like-minded, that wanted to do something different, that, you know, that don't like the way the WWE operates and presents their stuff, you know. They want to, it's so the WWE's conflict comes from the creative end at this point, where everything, you know, is the buck stops at the bosses, and they decide, you know what I mean? And if they want to dress you like a clown or an auto mechanic or whatever it is, you know, they want to dress you, and people don't like that, you know? So, I don't know. I think that All Elite Wrestling had a successful show this last weekend. A couple of real standout moments, but the moment you're talking about, the problem is that Cody Rhodes is, you know, pretty much the face of the company, was getting done with his match, and he got, you know, the traditional next rival coming into the ring and roughing him up. And he was turning around, and I think our editor is going to actually show this clip at the very beginning of this video. So if you've already seen it, it's at the beginning here. And what it is he's turning around, and the other dude's waiting with a chair, and he took a chair shot there that, you know, he goes down super hard.
Well, it was clear that I mean, unless they had a female referee in there, and let me start by prefacing that I don't know anything about professional wrestling other than Dick the Bruiser backwards. So my professional wrestling knowledge is minimal at best. I'm always interested in promotions and business and how people promote. And I can say that Vince McMahon in the WWE is the second best live promotion out of every concert, every live entertainment event I've ever seen. That is without a doubt the second best I've ever seen. And I've seen it on the turnbuckle. So I've been very, very close to it and been able to experience it where I could see all of the flaws and the fakeness and all of that stuff. And even saying that, it's flawless. It's absolutely a marvel, the things that they do. So I give them props for that. But having said that, I don't know anything about professional wrestling as far as, like, Miguel had to teach me what it meant to, I think the last time he told me about heat, bringing heat or something like that. And I think this time you're going to talk to me about bumps, which to me a bump is something completely different. So talk to me. So talk to me. You know,
that's a different.
We're not talking about my 20s anymore. So talk to me about what a bump means, and in professional wrestling, first of all. So go through that real fast and give me that first, Miguel.
Okay, I mean, the bottom line is that Cody Rhodes took that chair shot, and it was meant to be a bump. It's meant to set up a feud with the guy. The guy's a new signing for AEW. His name's going to escape me right now because I don't want to go there. But the bottom line is Cody, they did a beautiful promo with him in a car and looking over the city and stuff like that. And the guy wanted to come to AEW and make an impact with his whole promo. Now, the guy hit with the chair is the guy who signed them. That's the story that AEW is able to present because Cody is involved in the decision-making process. So there is the betrayal. That's the story for the fight. That's why they will be fighting over the next few months and stuff. So
okay, I'm confused. I'm confused then because I naturally assumed when you said a bump that was something physical.
No, it is. That's what I'm saying.
But you're actually saying that a bump is not just physical.
No.
But it's also a bump. It's a bump for rating. Is it a bump for ratings?
No, the bump comes. So what happens is Cody Rhodes is now he faced Darby Allin at the pay-per-view. And for example, a bump in that match, Darby Allin had Cody Rhodes outside the ring and he was in the ring. He went to the top of the rope and then went to the edge of the turnbuckle and threw himself. They called it a coffin dive because he throws himself back first instead of forward. Back first in order to try to land on just to land on the guy cannonball style. And he missed and he hit the ring apron. And it was hard. There's no doubt that it was a hard hit. The crowd can feel that. That's a bump. It's the moment where the crowd, something happens in the ring where a guy has gotten into a situation or an action has happened where the crowd goes, wow. And it's usually from a fall or a bump like that, and that's where the name comes from. So does
the bump have to be accidental?
No,
it's not accidental. Bump, or is anything that they do that's physical is a bump? Pretty
much in that, yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Even if it's accidental, like he was supposed to land it and didn't land it on the guy, the bump is the bump because he's taking the fall off of the top of the ring thing. He's got everybody's attention, all eyes are on him, and he's about to go, land in a fall position. So
basically, watch this. When they hit the bump, they bring the heat, don't they, Miguel?
Oh, you're amazing. So anyway, Cody Rhodes has just finished his match with Darby Allin, and he's turning around, and this may have been, he was designed to take a bump, which was the betrayal of the guy hitting him in the head with a chair. Now, whether the chair was modified properly or the hit came at an awkward angle or, whatever it was, the controversy is, as you can see in the video, Cody's arms are very much down and almost awkwardly down, like he's going to take a shot. Like he knows he's if I turn around and I see a guy swinging a chair, I mean, even if it's last moment, you'd see me, start that motion. You know what I mean? He stood there awkwardly. So he may have decided to take that shot. And that's kind of an old school thing because they don't really do headshots like that anymore. And if it went wrong for him, because he did he took staples to the back of the head, there was blood in the ring. As you pointed out, the ref was very concerned. And there was definitely an awkward moment there. Afterwards, they said he didn't have concussion. They said he was in the truck, looking at tape and stuff like that. But I can't imagine that type of headshot is good for you. You know what I mean?
So let me fill the audience in on where I'm at with this. Miguel tells me about this. He says, you got to see this. And after we did the last show where, I'm like, okay, fill me in on what pro wrestling is. I should know this. We're talking combat sports. But pro wrestling somehow gets thrown into the combat sports industry no matter what you do, and you can't get rid of it. So we have to deal with it. And there's going to be a whole lot of people out there that are going to go, screw you. If you don't like pro wrestling, we don't like you. And that's okay. Write a comment at the bottom and tell me how much you hate me. But pro wrestling to me it's utterly ridiculous. But I do see the show in it, the presentation, the Barnum and Bailey, if you will. And P.T. Barnum was the ultimate promoter, and he was the ultimate in what he did, and he was really the first to do it maybe the Caesars, I don't know, but he was the first to do it in what we can consider modernity. Anyways, my point is this. Miguel sends me the link and says, you have to see this. And so I watched it begrudgingly because I'm like, I don't want to watch another one of these stupid things. And so I begrudgingly watched this and I went, oh, wow. And the first thing that I noticed wasn't, the first thing I noticed was usually when they hit them with the chair bends. This chair didn't bend. So I don't know if the guy got the wrong chair, if, I don't know what happened, but I mean, clearly the chair usually bends and it kind of sounds like they got hit with a big tinfoil pie pan almost, and the chair is modified in some way. This chair didn't bend and he hit him very hard and he hit him flush right on the head. And the guy just drops. And when he dropped, he didn't drop like he was dropping where he put his hands down to drop, which you almost have to do. It's almost impossible to not make yourself put your hands out when you drop. That's a very hard thing to even learn. He didn't learn this. This wasn't something he intentionally did. This guy dropped. He fell out. And what I noticed more than anything else that showed me that this was a real hit was that the female referee they had in there, when you watch her reaction, she's kind of standing there and she went and starts running towards the wrestler that was hit. And I mean, immediately is running towards him and looks very scared. And the guy that hit him also looks, to me, he has a look of guilt on his face. Like, oh boy, I might have just lost my job. That might be bad. That might be bad.
Look, they spun it the right way, and Sean Spears is the fighter's name, and I really don't mean any disrespect, but he's a guy who's not done WWE as far as I know. He may have had a run at some point, but he's definitely not a top name in terms of full on the wrestling business. So when he signs to AEW, it's because he's talented, right? And if they're going to move him into a feud with Cody Rhodes, then he's getting a nice position here. We'll see, if it was an error, they're going to have to work through it. And they're susceptible to it because the show has that chaotic feel to it, the wrestling that they're doing is definitely going to be something that people want to watch. I think it's something that is on par with WWE. They did a few things, and a few of the guys maybe aren't, quite ready for prime time, but very entertaining stuff. And I think they took the tongue-in-cheek stuff that UFC likes to do, like sometimes like a Doink the Clown, stuff like that. I mean, they have a good amount of stuff like that, lighthearted stuff, and guys that are, teammates, like a pair of guys that they're presented as best friends and they hug during the match and stuff like that. I mean, so they've got a good amount of hokey shit like that they do. But those are gimmicks that came through from the indie circuit, and guys remember them from the indie circuit and stuff like that. And based on that, they get, on their heat there, AEW is kind of bringing the grassroots along. So that's why many people do see that it's going to be a consistent challenge to WWE. We'll see in the fall when they get on TNT. I believe they're going to be on national television on a weekly show and weekly television. They bought in guys like Chris Jericho are there, even John Moxley, who's there. These guys have done weekly television for the WWE. Cody Rhodes. They will keep the young guys who've never had that from the indie circuit in line, and everybody's thinking positive with it. So it's a good time to watch. It's a good time to watch. It's very interesting as they mount this challenge, and they very much are doing that.
So first of all, I know who Chris Jericho is because I sat beside him and had 3 hours one night at an MMA match where he and I judged. Believe it or not, he was a judge, and it was in Kentucky. It's a very long time ago. He was a great guy, and the only reason I even recognized him was because I'd seen him on VHS's Something About Metal. I don't remember what it was, but he talked.
Right.
He's a metal fan.
No, he's
Anyways,
not a metal fan. He's actually a lead singer for like a pretty frontline band as well. So it's like his wrestling and I'm gonna have to look up the name now because
he's more than a metal fan.
He's an absolute rock star. He's an absolute rock star.
Okay,
on the side
he's a really regardless. He's a really cool guy. He's very down to earth and he's very intelligent.
All the above.
And so besides that, and Dick the Bruiser coming from my hometown, that's kind of my package of what I know about wrestling in general. I also know that BioAccelerator, from whom my son received stem cell treatment, has talked with Hulk Hogan and some of the other WWE and former wrestlers about getting stem cells, which leads me into what we have.
That's what I want.
What we really want to talk about is we want to talk about stem cells and how this can help. So, Miguel, I think it would probably be easier if you asked me the questions on this, because I think there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and just no information about stem cells. And so hopefully I can help lead you through that a little bit and how that's going to work in sports. And maybe that starts with wrestling.
I think wrestling is, like you said, the wrestlers are already using it, and they have, there's a therapeutic method there, and I think that they'll be very much into using it, whereas they're also not really competing. I mean, they are competing for paychecks and position in the company, and it's as heated a competition as you want to get, but they're not competing in the ring. So in that case, I don't really care if my other opponent is enhanced or et cetera in any way, shape, or form. So at any rate, when I see a headshot like Cody Rhodes took at the AEW show that leads off this video, and let's say a concussion ensues from that, is that something that stem cells would, a stem cell treatment would be something like, do you take them down? Is it the future of stem cells where, they become more common? You don't have to go to a clinic and spend, 5 figures in getting them, and they become more of a treatment kind of thing. Could he be taken to a hospital and given a stem cell treatment to assist with the post-concussion syndrome?
Okay, that's a great question with a pretty complicated answer that I'm going to try to make easy. And so I'll try to use layman's terms. Matt Hughes was in an accident in 2017, 9-time world champion at welterweights for the UFC, when the UFC was in the boom period, the first boom. And Matt Hughes suffered a massive, he actually had neuronal shearing and brainstem shaking and the whole thing. And so that's called a global head trauma. Had Matt Hughes been in Medellin, Colombia, when that happened, one of the things they would have done within 72 hours probably of the accident was begin administering stem cells into him, either intrathecally or IV or both, and probably both.
So that's an IV or intrathecally is through the spine, right?
Yeah, intrathecal means through the spine, actually literally going directly into the cerebral spinal fluid, which passes directly through and doesn't have to pass over the blood-brain barrier. And for those who don't know, blood-brain barrier is kind of it's kind of a mucousy membrane that surrounds the brain. It's really lipids. It's really just fats. And so when you take fish oil, if you're not taking fish oil wrapped in lipids, then it's useless. So, or at least for your brain. So take fish oil wrapped in lipids, lipid wrapped fish oil, and that will help you a lot more if you have concussion syndrome, headaches, anything like that. But that's a different podcast. So here's what I can tell you about what I wish would have happened when my son was hurt in 2010. I wish that stem cells would have been available for him then, so that we could have immediately started administering stem cells to start helping mend the areas. And so the answer then obviously is, to some degree, yes. It's a little more complicated than that. But I mean, if you want to break it down to kind of a simple yes or no answer. Should we give him stem cells or not after he has a concussion? Well, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Now what are stem cells going to do in comparison to nothing? That's a little harder to answer. Not because,
but you do see. I mean, there have been, like, for example, with your son being able to stand up a short period afterwards.
Yes.
Here's the shadow I see, especially when you move over into the competitive sports.
Mm-hmm.
The looming issue I see. Okay, so
here we go.
I'll just take you right over to MMA, but in the Cody Rhodes world in wrestling, it also has its interpretations. But right over to MMA, I get knocked out. I'm taking a 90-day suspension right now. Go rest your head. Hey, I just took a stem cell treatment. I'll fight in 10 days. You can fight.
No, it can't. It doesn't work that way. They don't work that quick. Okay.
Now, what worries me is that they're not being implemented that way. But if they were applied that way, could you head in that direction? In other words, Cody Rhodes just took that headshot. Let's say in a worst case scenario in wrestling, he could be fooled into being like, "Hey, I feel pretty good after that stem cell stuff. Let's do that headshot thing 3 times next week in front of live audiences just to get the pop, and then go take the stem cells and get better." You know what I mean?
That is an enormous question that I've never even thought about, Miguel. No, and no.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't recommend doing it, but these are distortions.
But yeah, you're going to see that, right?
And I mean, the company, with all due respect to All Elite Wrestling, their first appearances have been, All In, Double or Nothing. I mean, they're living that out right here. So, is that something where right now Cody Rhodes is going to say, well, I'm going to start taking it easy on these headshot things here? Or if it's something that could help him through them, is he going to try to, they are trying to get attention and trying to go all in. So I can see this being distorted in some way, shape, or form. Not that it is, but I can see in the future, with stem cells being a lot more prevalent, it going in this direction in a business that's so, competitive, and this is where the competition of pro wrestling comes in,
Yeah.
How long can you go? Not everybody can, we talked about in MMA, the longevity of Diego Sanchez. In wrestling, longevity can turn into a 30-something year career. But even then, those guys are few and far between. A Ric Flair, comes along only once in a blue moon, and
the guys.
Cody's dad was one of those guys.
The guys that you see that do the super falls and take the huge shots and just get bludgeoned for 15 minutes, and then they come back and they win the round, or they win the match in the last 5 seconds of the match or whatever, get the pin. Those guys, you don't see them around very long, right?
The bottom line is that's not particularly true. They do slow down, but it becomes the kind of thing where the setup to the move, it ages in a certain way. They have to set it up, whether it's a big fall, or whatever, or they take them less, or, they transition out of them and stuff like that. But, like, for example, you got a guy like Jeff Hardy, who's still crazy in the falls he takes, and he's in his 40s. You know what I mean? So at some point he is going to have to slow down. But some of those guys, they're freaks that way. And then when that becomes their move, you're talking about here's where wrestling's changed with the internet, and now with AEW coming up with a weekly show as well. That aspect of, hey, we got to do the same show in Cincinnati, Nashville, and Baton Rouge this week. You know what I mean? Which would implicate taking some form of a headshot or whatever 3 times for live audiences. You don't need to do it anymore. If you're presenting your product, people are seeing it on the internet. They saw that. They would almost go to the show and be like, "That's what they did." It's like,
So in other words, the internet has eliminated the idea of replay, the repetitive beatings that they have to take? Do you think it's eliminated that?
I think the presentation of wrestling where, there comes wrestling comes with this aspect of the guys have to work 250 days a year. And that was the aspect of doing the tours and stuff. And I don't know in the case of WWE that they're not going to have to keep doing their tours just to keep, they have to have a live presence as well, not just be a TV product, right? So twice a year they swing in Indianapolis and everybody in Indianapolis goes, you know what I mean? And they have to keep that going. But that's Indianapolis. Those trucks pack up and they hit Cincinnati the next day and Memphis the next day. And, and that's the way it also used to be. But now you can literally see the show from yesterday on the internet. And, maybe the company doesn't like that, but the AEW, they're into that. They're very, very media savvy, and they've got a lot of internet presentation and shows and things that they do and things. And they don't necessarily need to repeat that bump every time. But that's what worries me about it. Now translate that to MMA. Max Holloway just should take a 90-day suspension after the last fight he had, where Poirier beat him up pretty good, and he took repetitive headshots throughout the whole fight. But what if he walks out of there, and he's had issues before? What if he walks out of there and has stem cells and says, "I'm fine"?
See, here's the problem with that. Okay, so let's put out the question let me illustrate the question the way I understand you to ask it. If a guy is a wrestler or a fighter or a football player, whatever it is, or a water skiing is extremely damaging to your head, by the way. Waterboarding, anything that shakes your head like this is very, very damaging, including horseback riding, for example.
Metallica concert.
And Metallica concerts. Headbanging is legitimately very bad for your head, very bad for your brain. It's bad for your neck and it's bad for your brain. We used to, the song Whiplash actually came about, supposedly, this is a story we used to hear in the 80s. Whiplash from Metallica came about because someone was headbanging so hard that they felt like they had whiplash. And so that's where they got the idea to write the song Whiplash, which I think Mustaine wrote that for Metallica, but whatever. Anyways, so the question is this. Will athletes start saying, you know what, I can go ahead and take more headshots. I can go in head first and get hit, get the takedown, or I can fall off the ladder if I'm a wrestler, or if I'm a football player, I can go in head first and go ahead and plant my head into his back.
But let me make it even a little bit more scientific at my level, and then you could take it up a notch if it comes to that, right? But if I'm doing a therapeutic stem cells, and fighters report a general sense of also, hey, my knees felt a little better, that shoulder pain went away and that stuff. So now with just that therapeutic way, and you mentioned the mucus that protects your brain and stuff. Maybe in a boxer who's been knocked out 5 times or an MMA guy who's been knocked out 5 times, there's a wearing out of that, and now you're more susceptible to knockouts. Your chin goes. Now, is there some way, like Jonathan Ivey said it when I was talking to him about the recent Dos Santos fight, and he said it perfectly in his little talk about it. He said the human head can only take so many shots. And, he included his head, so he felt a difference. So now, what if all of a sudden it's like, I feel like I can take, like maybe I'm back to being a guy who can take those shots after stem cell treatments. Maybe that's part of what bounces back. And is that good for you? To me, I'll give the analogy I gave off camera to you because I like it and I don't know if it makes sense. But it's like if you have 2 cars, you have a car here, and you have another car here that's the exact same car, but this car has been turned over 3 times. I'd still rather have stem cell-free head, trauma-free head. You know what I mean? But once you got, because it's like having a rolled over car afterwards where it's like it's patched up, it's perfect, it's good to go, but you have that thing in the back of your head. No matter what, he has been knocked out 5 times, 6 times. Even if he's taking it well, or the next day, he's able to quote Shakespeare, and he's not suffering head trauma. He's not showing any physical signs of head. Max Holloway showed signs of concussion. You could tell he was fucked up talking.
Yes.
So,
okay. That's the perfect analogy. And to use the exact same analogy, stem cells are the body putty and the Bondo and the new fender they welded in and the new window they put in. Stem cells are that, but it takes much longer. And I'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, let's just pretend that stem cells, just as soon as you put them in, boom, they were the Bondo, they were the putty. You put it back together, you paint the car. It looks exactly the same. The problem is the Bondo chips off after a while, whereas metal just rusts. So the car that's been turned over and beat up and crashed, even though it looks exactly the same, it's not going to have the same longevity as the car that never got hit. So you're dead on with that analogy. Even with stem cells fix things that are broken, if you want to look at it that way. And that's a big leap to even say that. Keep in mind, I'm talking in layman's terms here. I'm not talking academically and scientifically. But yeah, if you want to look at it that way, stem cells, we hope, fix things that are broken. But here's one of the things that matters with that. Let's say that you have CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and you have a massive area in your brain where the white matter is gone. So there's gray matter and there's white matter in your brain. And the white matter is the stuff that dissipates due to amygdaloid entanglements, which we don't need to get into all that right now. We can do it another time. And I'll do like a full stem cell thing. But what happens is the white matter starts to dissipate and you start to see basically a hole where there used to be matter there in the brain holding it together as mostly glial cells, which are glial means glue cells. So they glue the cells together, they glue the brain together. And when that happens, if there's not enough of that, then there's not enough for the stem cells to even make a lattice, to even form new areas for it to grow back together. So at some point, there are people who have back problems, for example, that they're not fixing it no matter what, because the bone, women are more prone to osteoporosis, obviously. And women who have severe osteoporosis and they get it in their back, they're much more difficult, if at all, to even help, let alone fix, with stem cell treatment. And the reason is because the stem cells have to have something live to attach to and to make grow. So mesenchymal stem cells don't do the job themselves. They don't just go in there and go, oh, there's stem cells here now, so now we have this hole patched. What they do is they tell the stuff around the hole to start building the lattice, to start working to kind of fill in the hole. So if you've ever seen a welder weld a hole shut, they do it, from the outside in until they're right there in the middle. And that's kind of what stem cells do in a really gross analogy of it. But so how often can that happen? Well, first of all, mesenchymal stem cells last approximately 3 months in the body before they just they dissipate so much that they're not doing their job anymore. That's why we go every 2 months right now to Colombia and get more stem cells for my son's brain injury, because he has a severe traumatic brain injury in which there is a massive hole in 3 different parts of his brain when you look at it on an MRI. And we are trying to build a lattice around those holes. Once you build that lattice around those holes, you have new cells there. But what do you have to do with the new cell? I mean, when you get a puppy dog, you have to train it not to pee on the floor, right? You have to train that cell to do what it's supposed to do. So just getting the stem cells that's only half the battle. That just gives you the ability to move forward and train something that wasn't there before. If it wasn't there at all, you can't train it. At least we can train this now, and we can work through therapy to get something done. So when you're talking about wrestlers going in and getting a, what would you call that? A prophylactic stem cell shot, I guess. It doesn't work that way. And so, no, that's not going to be how it's going to work. It's going to be something that they're going to be. Now, I believe through CRISPR and Cas9 and gene editing, in 10 years, we're going to have a much closer approach to exactly what you're talking about. But we're not even close to that yet. And so with stem cells, what you're going to see is when fighters are done. Chuck Liddell just joined BioAccelerator. A wrestler I can't talk about just joined BioAccelerator. A fighter who's fighting this weekend that I don't have permission to talk about just joined BioAccelerator, and he's fighting in the UFC's event this weekend. And he's an older fighter, and he went down and had stem cell treatment. So he is fighting. A fighter that just won 2 belts I can talk about now because he's on there. Patricio, I get him mixed up. But one of the Pitbull brothers, the one that won the 2 belts from Bellator, knocked out. Help me, Miguel.
Michael Chandler.
Chandler knocked out Chandler. He had stem cells literally injected into his knuckles because his hands were so damaged. Now, is that what helped him knock out Michael Chandler? No, because there wasn't enough time. But what it did do was it.
Well, it definitely this is where from a competition standpoint, you really can't say that because from a confidence standpoint.
Well, from a confidence standpoint, that's
just
different.
The ability to come in and throw freely like he couldn't before. Just the ability that may be all he needed without any real physical change. So
right,
yeah,
which brings into which brings up an entirely different content of subject, which is this cheating? Is it a PED more or less?
That's why.
But that's pro wrestling world. But we're talking about pro wrestling right now, and so let's talk about It's AEW, right? Again, I'm completely ignorant on wrestling. I apologize to people out there who are going, this guy shouldn't even be talking about wrestling. You're probably right. But Miguel is trying to teach me about wrestling so that those of you who are peripheral fans can really understand what wrestling's about. Because what I have learned is that there's some pretty fascinating stuff to it too. So, Miguel, there's another part of this that you wanted to talk about. Let's jump to that. I think we've covered stem cells as much as we can for now, right? Do you want to cover that next part of that we were talking about?
Was this the business end?
Well, with the new girl in wrestling in the EEW, the AEW.
Oh no, let's save that for a separate podcast.
Okay, we'll do that.
Let's wrap this one up because I think Cody Rhodes. Obviously, he's young. He's the face of the company. He's going to be okay. We'll see if they're going to do more extreme shots like this. They've shown a lean towards extreme stuff, but I think if they're going to be doing a show once a week or every couple of weeks or whatever, right now, and not having the intense schedule, the guys are going to feel some of the pressure to really show their stuff. And they've been going with some extreme guys like Janela, who fought John Moxley, who's Dean Ambrose from the WWE, and that was a fight with table bumps and thumbtacks. Just not pleasant to wind up with thumbtacks all over your back and feet and stuff like that. But so Janela, Jimmy Havoc is another dude. The guy leads off with a staple gun. You know what I mean? And but he's an interesting character in terms of talking outside the ring and stuff like that.
Is that the guy from the movie The Wrestler?
No. I not that I know of. I've seen the movie The Wrestler, but it's too long ago, and I missed the connection if it is Jimmy Havoc. It's a British fighter. The wrestling scene is pretty big in England too, and so there's a lot. Of guys like that I don't know, how much, that gimmick, they're going to have to wrestle at some point, and that's the thing is like when you talk, you find out a little more about Jimmy Havoc, it's like, all right, the guy's got a staple gun and stuff, but that should be, the kind of thing. It's like, oh, we're going to do a staple gun match or something now for the pay-per-view or whatever. But if you're going to feature him every week, if he has a staple gun, it really becomes kind of lame, boring and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, he's going to be forced to wrestle. And, he's a smaller guy, but that's been a wave lately in the business. And he's definitely trained in wrestling. He comes from the same school as Finn Balor and, exceptional talent there. So he's going to be fine when it comes to that. And that's what the AEW is counting on, that they're going to have a product that it can get your attention, but they can stay with it. With Tony Khan's money, they've got, 3 years worth of contracts that are going to put them on TV. So we'll see how it is at the end of that 3-year run. But I predict that we're going to get more talent heading over to AEW. And the biggest name of all could be August. And this may be just me blowing smoke and stuff, but by coincidence, they're doing their August show in Chicago. And, if they were to bring CM Punk back to the wrestling world and not to WWE, it would be as big an attention getter in that business as any move that WWE could make at this point. WWE resigned Brock Lesnar and stuff to really lure. Punk said he'd never be back at WWE. And there you get the whole UFC mess and stuff that he did like that. But he was still the leader of let's not do things the WWE's way is in many ways CM Punk. If he pops up in August, you know that these guys have full and mean intentions. I think they've already shown them, but that would really show some power.
Well, hey, listen, this has been fascinating for me as always. Should I be embarrassed that I'm actually really interested in pro wrestling now in some bizarre way?
I mean,
Miguel?
I see both ways. I can look down at it as kind of white trashy and kind of like, I don't
mind that. I'm as white trash as it
But
gets.
that's what I mean. It's like you're from Indiana. I think you should like pro wrestling. I think that's all you need to know.
Wow. Why don't you just kick me in the nuts when you say that?
No, hey, I love you guys. Everybody from Indiana. And people
right.
know, I think I've been in Indiana enough and know enough people from there that I can at least joke a little bit.
Of course.
I love it.
Hey, listen, this has been Cadillac. That's Miguel Iterati. This is the CRP. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow. Don't forget to share. If you don't do that, we don't get to keep doing this. Let everybody know about us. We appreciate all of the support. We keep growing and growing and growing. We're getting thousands of hits a week instead of hundreds of hits a week now. That's a really good thing. We're pretty proud of that, and we've worked really hard to do it. Go back, check out on our YouTube page. Check out the catalog of the massive amount of videos that we have there. We're well over 550 videos now, I believe, and so you can check that out and watch just about anything you want to watch concerning combat sports, all the way through to should Nazis be able to sell vegetables. So thanks for having us. Miguel, thanks. It's been a good time. We'll see you again next time. Until next time, namaste.